Pokémon franchise is a staple in the history of gaming, with a big number of main titles and countless spin-offs. It's a series enjoyed around the world by almost all audiences, and it's held this right since 1996. Words can't even explain how successful this franchise is. Their output consists of video games, card games, clothing, books, even shampoo. Who is buying this? But in this video, we're going to be focusing on the games that Game Freak takes pride in creating. Each Pokemon game follows a similar trajectory, which we're going to call the Pokemon formula. This consists of getting a starter Pokemon, traveling through the region to beat all 8 gyms, facing off with the legendary Pokemon in the game's climax, then beating the Elite Four and becoming champion. Most Pokemon games stick with this formula, however some go with a different approach, and some of them are successful, and others maybe not as much. And in any other case, the same formula over and over again would become stale and boring, but Pokemon is a different case. The anticipation of the evolved forms of the starter Pokemon always get me excited for the new games. The 100 plus new Pokemon being presented to you. Shinies, evolved forms, I could go on. With the success of Pokemon Sun and Moon in 2016, the fans were happy and ready for another game. But with the arrival of Sword and Shield in 2018, there were some problems. This shot of a tree in the Pokemon Sword and Shield gameplay premiere stirred up the Pokemon community and had a lot of people disappointed and let down. Not only that, but it was later released that in this entry, half of the Pokédex was going to be cut for optimization reasons. And you can only imagine the outrage that was caused among the community. This bump in the road was the first of many, as we'll see some soon in the future. But first we should talk about the 2 successful titles that came before the storm. On November 15th, 2021, Diamond and Pearl remakes were announced for the Switch, something that fans have been asking for a long time. The community was satisfied, but Pokemon wasn't done. On January 24th, 2022, Pokemon released a trailer for an upcoming mainline game called Legends Arceus. This game combined open-world elements with your standard Pokemon formula to form a great mix of action and story. Like I said before, this game had a different take on the Pokemon formula, and it executed it greatly. With 2 new games released essentially back-to-back, the community wasn't expecting anything for the next year or two, but only 1 month after the trailer for Legends Arceus, a trailer for another mainline game dropped. Scarlet and Violet was set to release in late 2022, which we know now to be November 18th. Pokemon games usually take 2 years to develop, but this was only a 10-month gap between games, so fans were skeptical. There wasn't much to pick out from the first sneak peek at the game, so the fans just had to play the waiting game until they were given another preview. Finally, about 3 months later on June 1st, Pokemon dropped the second trailer for Scarlet and Violet. The trailer looked promising. It had passable graphics, decent looking characters, and nice looking legendaries for once. A couple trailers later, the game was finally here, and people were excited. But things started to come up. Posts and articles about lag spikes, bad rendering, crashing, and FPS drops started popping up quickly. I mean, compared to Sword and Shield, this was bad. This whole situation caused a stir up online. People dropped the game, and views went down on streaming platforms. Now mind you, the game wasn't completely dead. It still maintained a large amount of players, but this was a new low for Pokemon. In early December last year, the 1.1 patch was released. This did help with some texture issues, however other problems were still apparent. Nothing much changed. This left the fans disappointed rather than angry, because complaining wasn't worth it. All of the negatives have already been discussed. Scarlet and Violet are the most controversial Pokemon games after Sword and Shield, and the mixed reviews have only been increasing with each mainline title. Realistically, this pattern will most likely continue. The Pokemon Company has been dropping games consistently since they began, and the audience will always keep growing, so there will always be this constant urgency to churn out games frequently, regardless of performance. I know, kind of a bummer, but as of now, it's how it looks. Now, I know I've spent the last 6 minutes informing you about Pokemon's misses these past few years, but I want to make it clear that I love Pokemon. It's one of, if not my favorite franchises, and I've loved it since I was young. I started with trading Pokemon cards in elementary school and eventually discovered the games when I grew older. And I'm not alone on this. Practically every person I know had grown up with the Pokemon franchise. I've bought every single mainline entry starting with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Gen 3 is the best, by the way.
And despite the state of Pokemon games right now, I'll probably continue to buy them, because despite the performance issues, the stories along with the game have been becoming more interesting. I'd like to think of the situation right now as just a bump in the road, and I'm hoping for better games in the future. And I believe that's possible, because we just got 2 great mainline games last year. Now, I could go on and go into great detail about tedious reasons why Pokemon games are falling off, but I'm gonna leave it there. I've been Joe Cool. Until next time.